Yes, it is NFL Combine Week. This feels like one of my favorite weeks of year every year because we get so much information. It's not just about the rookies. If anything, for me, this is as much about what we find out about the veterans for contract extensions. And today, Daniel Jeremiah was tweeting about how he expects there to be a raft of contract extensions in the coming week because teams have got the money. The free agency class isn't great, and there's plenty of holes in this rookie class. Tyler, what's one big thing that you're waiting to see this week?
I mean, the one thing, the underrated part that I love about the combine is that folks come into Indy to just hot gossip like a bunch of teenage girls. All the teams talk to each other, all the agents tamper. It's the first time that we get like big movers. So I like Daniel Jeremiah. I very much expect a bunch of free agents to not leave, to be re-signed and extended in house. Guys to be restructured early on with the cap space. What I'm excited to hear about is how legitimate are these guys are likely to be moved. I think the two big pieces, probably three. If you, it's all the quarterbacks. How likely is it that Stafford's out? Because that's what they're going to be talking about the combine is what do you want to pay him? What are you going to pay me? And then what are you willing to deal for it? So like, how likely is it that Stafford leaves? Last time we heard, both sides would like to work it out. It's just a matter of how much money. And then is Darnold going to be a tag and trade? Is he going to hit free agency? And then is Derek Carr on the move away from New Orleans? All three of those could vastly change how other offenses, ceilings and floors turn out, and what the top of the draft is going to look like as far as guys moving in and out. It seems like the Titans are wanting to trade out. So it's like a lot of movement could be, a lot of pieces could start settling very quickly just with what teams are likely to start doing or pulling triggers on and who's going where. That's my personal favorite part. I know guys love watching the 40 and they see whose willies, wiggle out of their one pieces, which, great fun. But I love the rumor mill because we hear a lot by the end of the week of who's going up, who's going down, and who might be leaving town. So very excited to hear all that because it's going to shape a lot of these early ADPs, and it's going to start helping us shape, how much hope or how much dire need some of these teams are coming into, during this portion of the offseason.
Yeah, definitely. Like for me, I'm really interested in what Aaron Rodgers' market looks like. Is he somebody who we start to hear actively does have a market or not? Because I kind of just expected that he probably wouldn't. I want to see what the running back free agency kind of looks like for Najee Harris, because much as I've ragged on Najee Harris over the years, I think that we could have some good opportunities for him, see what he looks like away from the Steelers. We are into the big board draft, picking at the 110. I don't think we've picked too much of the back end of the draft board so far in these ones that we've done. Tyler, have you been getting stuck at the back end of drafts?
Oh, brother, you might as well call me the caboose. I am the back end these days. I am, and that's not even a joke. I am getting stuck with so many 10, 11, and 12 round picks in a lot of these contests. So, very, very used to it. But luckily, there's been a little bit of movement that help shake things up, and just ready to draft a really good team out of 10. We're gonna get one of Amon Ra, Malik Neighbors, or Brian Thomas Jr., and that makes me feel all sorts of Woody Marks.
Yeah, and shout out to the chat. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight. I know a lot of you sickos will be absolutely balls deep in drafts by this point already. Is anyone maxed either big board or the little board yet? I've seen a few tweets from people who've already kind of hit the little board completely to max. Myself and Tyler, we've been working through a bunch of slows as well, and you can check those out on the channel. We'll have more of those videos over the coming days. But yeah, just a good time to be drafting. This feels like, the start of all the action, really. Steph saying she's maxed for little board. Love it. What a
Yeah,
degenerate.
I want to say Chad Candles is close to maxing the big board, like an absolute degen. And I have found myself, I go to click register and I go, come on, just wait for the combine week. You're gonna know free agency news. You're gonna know RAS news. Just wait. But man, that dopamine hits, and I'll do one draft today. Two. Draft during lunch. I want to go for a walk. Let me get a draft. Then all of a sudden you've maxed the contest. So that's just life. Life as a best ball sicko.
There's far, far worse things that you could be going through. Jamar Chase, Saquon, Bijan Robinson, Jameer Gibbs, just Jefferson, Puka Nacua, pretty standard so far. It feels like people have kind of settled in quite a lot over the last few weeks, really, with a lot of these. I haven't seen anything too outrageous. Like in a lot of the slows we've been doing, it feels like most of the picks are quite consensus. People are pulling quarterbacks up at times, but the first round seems quite sensible. So, as you said, Amon-Ra, Malik Neighbors, BTJ goes one pick before us. Strong lean, Tyler?
I don't have a strong lean, and I think let's. It is rumor mill season. Neighbors maybe feels a fun guy to move ever so slightly. I love Amon Ra, but Malik Neighbors' underlying metrics are fun, and if he gets any sort of competent quarterback play, he can nuke.
Yeah, I'm completely fine with that. I mean, like Amon-Ra last year saw his volume decrease or his yardage decrease, made up for it with touchdowns. But Malik Neighbors is just such an absolute dog that you get any kind of like uptick there, and it could be incredible. So very much in on it. So the rest of the room kind of going pretty much as you'd expect. Ash and Genty right on the turn. I was having a chat with somebody today who, let's say, they'll probably draft less than 5 teams all across the offseason, and they were insanely surprised to hear where Genty was going. Henry, London, Brock Bowers, like, I just want to draft an obscene amount of Brock Bowers this year, but anyone you want to make a case for, Tyler?
Well, let's just start your dopamine journey off well, Tom, and give you one more share of obscene amounts of big cock Brock Bowers, as he's called clinically in the streets.
I can't build any form of argument against him. Like, what do you think the worst case scenario at quarterback would be for Brock Bowers?
It would probably be Russell Wilson with a low. So here are my like fun question marks. I'd be much more hard up on those if he was a first round pick. Chip Kelly has given us really high pace, really efficient offenses, and he's also slowed down some teams with slow paces recently. How much do we weigh, different sample sizes? And then we know Pete Carroll has frustrated the dickens out of us with offensive pacing, offensive efficiency, and offensive philosophy. He's teased us with letting Russ cook for 4 to 6 weeks straight before throttling down just brutally. We know he's let his teams draft defensive linemen in the late picks to be starting offensive linemen, and it's been a disaster. So, like, I know philosophically from a macro perspective, this might be a very frustrating year or two under Pete Carroll if all of the downside risk bad things happen. That said, Pete Carroll does bring competition, it feels like his early years, he really brings vibrancy that the Raiders certainly need as an organization. And you'd imagine that they do something. My best case scenario would be, they get a Darnold and they lean into, just like play action, RPOs, quick hitter things, and just dumping the ball into the playmaker's hands quickly and efficiently, kind of copying what what Darnold just did under KOC and what we've seen Nick Foles do under Chip Kelly with the Eagles. Especially because Darnold was pretty efficient throwing deep, and deep passes to Bowers would really unlock his ceiling. But it would make sense considering right now he's the best playmaker on that offense. Jacoby Myers, not a jag, and then Tucker on the outside, and they have availability to add in the draft. Speedsters. We've talked about guys like Jalen Royals or maybe even someone in the first round. So it's like they have picks and they have money and they have space to make it work. To me, that's best case scenario. Is like, hey, we're going to give you youth, talent, and we're just going to let it rip. That would be best case scenario for me. I worry about like a game manager, win by playing defense type of thing, and there is a little bit of downside to that. And we kind of saw that last year, and Bowers was still a smash. Price was different, but touchdown upside remains really good with how the offense is.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at it last year and 4 touchdowns, only 1 weeks 1 through 8. So I think there's definitely uncapped potential there. I think for me, definitely a little bit concerned about the Pete Carroll side of things, but I do believe in that initial burst, like you said. I think that if they were going to spend capital on positions, it's got to be quarterback and running back. So running back was so dreadful. But we are back up. DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith. Feels like the wide receivers have been starting to go off the board. These guys, I'd probably slightly lean to DJ Moore, but I don't feel massively strong about any of them. What about you, Tyler?
I'm good with more. We could pull up Smith to try to do a Hurts Smith stack, so that's the only thing that stands out to me.
Yeah, go for that if you want to.
We got more.
Okay, I'm good with that. Like,
I like it. I mean, we know he's talented. We know he can be the deep guy. We know he can be the screen guy, and we know that Shane Waldron can be the big old pile of dino crap that brings everything down. We're not getting much of a price difference on Moore, but we know Caleb has a really high ceiling, and we know Ben Johnson's very good at making offensive go burr. And we've seen DJ Moore have, really, really, really high spike weeks. In best ball, that's what we kind of want. That said, I kind of lean, either Smith or Flowers, unless we want to get weird and flip the board over here. But we no need to kick up right now.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do it for those guys over Smith or Flowers. Let's go Devonta Smith. I mean, like, even my Ravens bias, I think that Smith's a slightly, when he hits, he tends to hit a little bit higher than Zay Flowers sometimes, where Zay Flowers, it's like you kind of feel like you're getting high teens, but Smith seems to have more of those games where you get into the 20s. So I'm very much okay with that one. Chad saying it's been hard for me to click Bowers over London. Yeah, I definitely get that. Like, I mean, they were both two of my kind of guys last year, and be two guys I definitely want to be overweight on this year. I think it's just a case of try to mix things up a little bit, and we haven't started many drafts with Brock Bowers early yet, have we, Tyler? So try
No,
to mix
in
that.
fact, so I mean, to that point, we were leaning London early on. Not sure if Brock Bowers' price would maybe fall a little bit from initial rankings. It has not. And so yeah, for us specifically, we like both London and Bowers. We've just ended up with a lot of London. We don't want to miss the boat completely on Bowers. And while I enjoy doing punt tight end, and I'll do plenty of it, a lot of the late guys have some unnecessary risk question marks to be taking right now. And Bowers allows us to, be done with two and allow us to fill out, especially with this start. We're kind of leaning zero running back right now. So wouldn't mind an extra spot allocated to running back this early on. Elite tight end allows us to do that. And there's no guarantee McBride comes back around to us. We'd have to take Kittle a little, we'd have to wait for a Kittle fall as well, who we've ended up plenty with. So just made sense for us. And Bowers is a guy that can get 10 catches and a touchdown. And that's pretty damn valuable at tight end or at flex, depending on how the roster fills out. So I don't want to have none. I don't love his price. I can poke holes in it, but you can do that with a lot of second round picks. I'm just glad I'm not having to pay, a top 10 pick for him. So I want a good amount.
Yeah, I'm definitely a little surprised that Bowers hasn't been sneaked up to the turn just yet. I thought maybe he'd sneak ahead of at least Ashton Genty, but we'll see. It's still plenty of off-season to go. Our good friend Meg saying, love taking DJ Moore in that range and want a lot of Kleb this year. I mean, it's the Ben Johnson effect, isn't it? You've got to
invest all in on the Bears offense. What could go wrong? Part 5.
Yeah, I mean,
please, Ben Johnson, please.
one time. So we're coming back up. We've got one pick before us, obviously 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end so far. It's that kind of little spell of running backs: Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker, Omari and Hampton, and then Derek like Caleb Johnson, Sam Laporta, who we've taken a little bit of in this range, but I'm not sure for this one. But Jerry Jeudy or Chris Godwin are our options at wide receiver. Do you like the wide receivers, or do you want to start mixing into this running back range?
One guy we have not gotten a whole lot of that I want to make sure I have some of is Hampton. And I feel like this is a good time to grab him just in case he rises around just because people are bored and he smashes the combine. He's gotten some really strong buzz. He's now getting potential, I know mock draft season, but like if you're getting round 1 buzz, if teams are really kind of bored and they don't think there's many, values on the board and they just want a safe hit to the class, I want to make sure I have some. I'm fading him. We've ended up with a lot of Walker, Connor. I don't love Kamara. And I had a feeling the receivers coming back around to us would feel just fine if we wanted to go that way. I also don't mind doubling up on running back at this turn either. I'm 0% tempted by naked Joe Burrow. Just me in the 6th.
Yeah, no, I'm good with that. Well, why don't we mix in another rookie and take Luther Burden, then?
Let's do it.
just to make sure we don't fall too far behind at wide receiver. But yeah, like I like the Mario Hampton shout. He's somebody that I know in Rich's rookie guide, which will be out the first draft in a couple of weeks' time. He said that anybody playing against Hampton will wake up the next day knowing that they've been in a game, called them an explosive and powerful runner that teams will feel tackling as the game wears on. So there's a lot to like about him. Obviously, a few downsides as well, but the kind of player that at this point in the game you want some exposure to. So yeah, very much okay with that one.
Chad, what if they play a bunch of dome games in the playoffs? What if they play Minnesota at Minnesota in week 15, 16? Week 17 is obviously Green Bay, Minnesota, either at Green Bay or in Minnesota. That just seems locked in the last couple of years. But their division, they could play the Lions or they could play the Vikings. Those are strong dome options and offensive options. Or they could play another dog shit outdoors game like Seattle a couple years ago. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got a good wait till the fixtures yet, but I'm not stressing that sort of stuff. It'll work itself out. It'll be good.
And that just goes to show you how bad sickos want to grind every edge. We're even talking about dome game offensive boosts or inclement weather issues in February. I love it. Never change.
Yes, a couple more days left and we'll be into March, though. Like the clock is ticking. It's already, I'm starting to think about what we're going to do and who we need to get on when the clock ticks over and so all of a sudden we're drifting in Best Ball Mania. Team out of a 2-hole with their second quarterback, with now has Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes stacked. I'm guessing we've got Barkley as well with Jalen Hurts. Yeah. It's an interesting one.
It's fun. I don't want to get too settled into, but I find myself very comfortable brandishing is that Matt Nagy is very bad for any team he's associated with. That feels very founded. And in the regular season, the Chiefs just don't need to hit all the levers to be very good on offense. And Patrick Mahomes will do what he's asked to do, and that makes him not that appealing in fantasy football, outside of playoff only contests.
Yep, absolutely right there. We on that one. Okay, so our boy Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris, pending free agent. There are some rumors that he could potentially go back, but we haven't really drafted Jaylen Warren at all. Have you taken him in drafts you've done without me?
I think I've taken him once without you.
Look, I mean, the thesis was good last year. It just never really played out in a way that we would have wanted it to. And if Najee's not there, the Steelers are probably primed to take a running back within the first 2 or 3 rounds. Definitely in the first 2 days, I think. But I just think that Jaylen Warren's so explosive. His ability in the passing game is so good that if we're worried about a rookie, what's the one knock we always put on rookies? Oh, is he going to be able to play on third downs? Is he going to be able to play in pass protection? All those kind of moments. Well, we know Jaylen Warren can do that, so I'm good with mixing him in a little bit. What are you thinking for the second pick?
Are we okay with little Pollard? And it maybe gives us an allowance to play a 5 or 6 running back room, starting kind of light at it.
Yeah, definitely. Pollard, a much easier click for me than Aaron Jones, Pacheco, Ramondre. I don't dislike those guys, but I think Pollard just kind of came on strong as the season went on. The team seemed to really like him. The way they wanted to get him to 1,000 yards or whatever it was at the back end of the season just shows you how much we think of him. So,
yeah, his legs were falling off, and they were like, we're going to get him all of those records and all of those incentives,
so
even though we could just give them to him and let him sit and not break his leg doing it.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice?
I will say the Warren thing, his pride, and this is a genuine change my mind thing. The injury was part of the bad run out, but we also saw the team just refuse to use him much more than Najee, even when it made sense to do so. He continued to be pretty efficient when he was fully healthy and do some good things. They just didn't utilize him on the goal line a whole lot. We know Arthur Smith loves to rub it in our face as fantasy players, how little he cares about our feelings and how he wants to run things the way he runs things, including inefficiently just for the sake of it. The passing efficiency they hit upset him deeply, according to insiders, because he wanted to run the ball. And it seems like he relegated Bijan for Tyler Algier, a 5th-round pick who was good, but so it's like they're gonna rotate backs. He
Yeah.
still mixes in a Cordell Patterson or whoever. So just from a pure volume perspective, and I know it's 7th, 8th round, so like that's some of the issue. But just in my head for like a nut run out, 20 plus touches type of 30-point ceiling type of vision in mind. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's just as long as Arthur Smith is around, he's going to hamper what Warren could truly do with more volume or just a more pass heavy offense where he could truly thrive as the pass catcher. I think I'm just worried he's mired in like the 12 to 17 point range without, getting a double digit
Yeah.
touchdown because of the volume.
No, I definitely take your points there. And I think when you look around, it's easy to see guys like Aaron Jones and potentially Ramondre Stevenson and maybe even J.K. Dobbins who get more volume. But from the point where Russ took over, Jalen Warren averaged like 13 touches per game. So it wasn't like he was completely out of it. I just don't think he ran very pure when he had the opportunities to do so. There were points where, Najee seemed to get the touchdowns and bits like that. And the Steelers just didn't score many touchdowns in general. I think if we can allow them a little bit of an increase in efficiency across the board and they score slightly more touchdowns, then perhaps there's a world where Jalen Warren scores more. And it's not somewhere where like last year where I'll be taking a 25%, 30% stance if the board stays the way it does. But he's not somebody that I want to ignore completely for the likes of Aaron Jones and Ramondre Stevenson, guys who we feel like the negatives are very clear for those players as well.
No, for sure. Yeah, and also from like a big board thing, I think his price is there, assuming Najee doesn't come back, but it's not assuming they replace him, which does feel very likely. And so he probably falls to 1 to 2 rounds when they bring someone in. We're here up on the 9th round. Do we want to get our receiver of choice and then push the decision of running back or quarterback, or what do you want to do here?
Yeah, I mean, wide receiver gets pretty gross pretty quickly. Are you gonna sell anyone apart from my guy Bateman?
No, I think we just bait off in front of the fine folks. That seems to be why they came here, and why we're coming. And then we'll figure it out. I have a suggestion that I'll hold in the chamber just in case we have some fine folks in the draft room with us that are in the chat. But yeah, I like, if our 5th guy is going to be someone who did have 2 touchdown games last year in his first ever fully healthy offseason and full season. He finally hit the glorious, glorious outcome that I've been hoping for until I abandoned all hope. So happen to Adam is wide receiver 5. Do we want to take a quarterback here?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be okay with a quarterback. We've, better than I do. You get locked out in these drafts, but Jordan Love, Drake May, I'd probably prefer the fun of Drake May, but Jordan Love feels like the better value. Which do you want to go with?
It's probably Love.
Go Drake May.
Okay.
It's more fun.
Did you like how I hung it in there to let you get you know what we're calling
I knew
this,
what you wanted to do.
scrap everything. We're calling this the Tom Has Fun draft. We took Bowers, we took Mayflowers, we've got Bateman. It's all there. I look at Love and May pretty similarly right now as guys that are attached to offenses that want to run the ball when everything is right. We saw that with Jacobs and with things working the way they were. McFleur was very happy to just run the hell out of the ball and make Jacobs the engine. I'm not certain they move away from that with Watson's injury. It seems like they are appalled, at least under McFleur, at the thought of having a true alpha wide receiver 1, which makes me think, okay, I'm not expecting them to replace Watson with anyone other than a bargain free agent or a or a draft pick outside of the top 2 rounds. So they like the rotation, and with the rotation, they don't truly lean on any one person for more than a matchup here or there. So I definitely think that the ceiling of Jordan Love, which did include a lot of big pass booms with multi touchdown games, but also rushing booms. We saw him kind of struggle, which wasn't super surprising in his second year, given how streaky he was in his first ever season. First few weeks, pretty bad, and then really ran hot in efficiency. We saw last year kind of be the same type of thing, but this time when the chips were down, just run it through Jacobs. So I feel like as a tier, I don't want to overrate Jordan Love's rookie season because I do think that might be an anomaly as long as that McFleur has access to a running back in a run game that he can use as the engine. And under Rabel, we've seen them kind of do the same thing with really good running back, but they don't have that guy in tow. And May's rushing floor, included 40 and 50 yards rushing. That was with a coach that didn't really want to utilize him like that. So I do think the Vrabel coaching bump could help a lot. And it seems like they have to just surround May with weapons now in his second year. And so there's a chance that we get bigger booms out of Drake May than Jordan Love, is the way I'm kind of thinking of it from the standpoint of who they're adding in free agency, who they're adding along the offensive line, and who they're adding in the draft. It feels like more weapons are coming into New England than likely Green Bay, at least on the offensive side of the ball. And, just Drake May having no one that's Kayshon Boutte and Pop Douglas could allow him to have some really nice spikes.
Yeah, you look back at what he had last year. He only had 4 games where he had multiple passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, he had 6 games where he had over 30 rushing yards or more. So it's like he did what he had to do last year, and it'd be nice to see an expansion of things. But if not, we know what we've got from the rushing game. Travis Kelce makes it to the back of round 11. Is that cheap enough, or do you want to go with someone else?
I'm not touching him there, frankly.
Okay, so wide receiver, we got Romeo Doubs further down, Xavier Legette, Travis Hunter, Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston probably should be okay there.
Yeah, I'm good with QJ. I'll get laughed at for taking and saying decently positive things about QJ back-to-back streams. But Sumi, the guy's attached to a good offense, and he started catching the ball, then included being in the red zone. And it doesn't seem like his role is going anywhere anytime soon. So I'm fine with that being in my room. Random 20-point games are good, actually, outside of the top 100 picks. Do we want to take Bryce Young and get our second quarterback here?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Unless there's somebody that you would prefer to take later on, like there's nobody massively appealing from a stacking perspective of
Okay.
anything.
If you don't want Bryce, who would you prefer here?
No. I'm saying I'm good with Bryce unless there was somebody else that you were wanting later
It's
on.
guys who are likely to come back to us at the next
Yeah.
couple rounds. I feel pretty strongly that the running backs at 154, 159, we're going to see names like a falling Jerome Ford, a Tyler Algier, or Ray Davis, or Ollie Gordon. I think those guys are very similar and fine. The quarterbacks might be the rookies, but it also might be just Geno and Sam Darnold. So Bryce Young, we can at least kind of stack him up a little bit late. It seemed like they trust him to be the guy. He showed us some really strong rushing and passing efficiency games. And I sneaky think that Dalton back on $5 million a year is all the additional signal that anyone doubting needed to know, which is this coaching staff's going to get there by making Bryce Young work on a rookie contract. And if it's not Bryce, well, then that's probably next year's problem for Carolina. This year, it certainly feels like they saw enough from him. And just following the coach speak, they said, he's our guy. He showed us enough. He grew. It's time to just keep adding talent around him. So I'm very, very comfortable with his price as a sneaky rushing option, but also as a guy who might have less bench risk than we thought a few months ago.
So after us, it's Travis Hunter goes, then Travis Kelce, and then Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland is somebody who Rich talked about in 2 Dynasty videos that we put out over the last week. One looking at guys who pop when playing on film, and then guys who have extraordinary numbers in the analytics way. Really recommend going back and checking those videos out. There's so much good information there, and he looks like a fun player. I mean, the rookie tight end class in general is quite a fun class. Obviously, Tyler Warren went a good few rounds before Colston Loveland, and then there's Harold Fannin as well. Have you been taking much of any of them, Tyler?
I have been trying. It's really hard to just gauge when they make sense. And my thing is, I feel like the tight ends and the running backs are so landing spot specific because while it does seem like a really talented tight end class, I don't look across the board and see a bunch of tight end openings. And we also know that these guys don't always translate easily year one. We also know that coaches don't like to necessarily, implement them day one unless they crush in camp. And we saw that across the board the last couple of years. There's also these tweener types that we've seen the last couple of years splitting reps and kind of hampering their floor and ceiling. Outside of the top, 13, 12, 13 rounds, you're more comfortable with that potential risk. But there's also still tight ends on the board that are likely to run all the routes and be it on play action for sure. So I'm a little lighter on the rookie tight ends than I'd probably like to be. But until I know what their RAS is, which is super important for like ceiling outcomes for guys and their potential draft capital, um, I'm taking them sparingly because I don't want to put too much risk into my roster right now.
No, I
And
think
as
that's
predicted, the running backs that we named did come back around to us. Do you want to take Jerome Ford, or do you like one of these other guys better?
Yeah, I'm good with Jerome Ford. I think, he was pretty unspectacular last year, didn't live up to kind of the expectations that he could have done. But I think that Jerome Ford still is reliable enough and has a decent enough role. We just know that there's certain builds where you don't necessarily want him. But as your running back 3, it feels much better than it would if he was running back 2.
And famously has had 17 and 25-point games in the fantasy playoffs back-to-back years, thanks to his pass catching and his ability to have explosive runs. And Thad, I said less bench risk than we would have thought. I'm in on Bryce Young. This is why we took him a few picks ahead of ADP.
Yeah, I think the problem with Jerome Ford, why I don't end up taking as much as I thought I might do, is because just the sheer amount of games where he had like single digit points, which was quite disappointing last year. It felt like you probably should have had more. But again, if we're betting on the Browns to be more competent, we've got David Njoku already. In one of our slow drafts, we were talking about him. Or was that in this one? I'm losing track because we drafted so many players today. That was a
You're all
different one.
right. We are back
Let's
on the
go.
court.
Yeah. Sam Darnold would make sense to kind of solidify this QB room, but I'd be okay if you want to push it.
No, I think taking him here makes sense. We mentioned that one of the best outcomes for the Raiders would be Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold stands out as a guy who is not returning to Minnesota. He is going to go somewhere. The Raiders have wanted a quarterback. They've missed out. It seems like the top 2 quarterbacks are going to be gone by pick 3 or 4, most likely in this draft. So they either have to trade up to 1 ahead of the Browns or the Giants, which is not cheap at all. But it's in the range of outcomes, or they get a Darnold and then they draft a Dart or a whomever else developmental option, and we have Brock Bowers. So now we're just kind of taking stabs at phantom stacks, and Darnold's also a guy that has had a nice rushing floor, and he's going to get a contract that makes him not a bench risk for year 1. Most likely is kind of the bet I'm making on him as it stands.
Who gets paid more this year? Sam Darnold or Matthew Stafford?
If Matthew Stafford leaves, Matthew Stafford. If Matthew Stafford stays, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
In like 2-year cash flow for sure. But APY, I'm sure they could do some funny money numbers for Stafford if he stays with like how it hits. Kroenke can shell out for the guaranteed signing bonus if he wants. Yeah, it does seem like he might be a little underpaid if he returns, which again makes the most sense for both himself and the team. It feels like just the most awkward way to do business right now, and that's almost assuredly being driven by the owner and the GM, not McVay and Stafford, who are just kind of having a look at each other and being like, I hope this all works out, bud.
I mean, I think you can afford to pay Matthew Stafford. I just think it's kind of looking at what you've got and what you want to do with money elsewhere. And I think because you've got Puka Nacua, because you've got Kyron Williams, and you've hit on these rookie defensive players, but you can afford to do that unless it's you're seeing the QB position. Much like with the Niners, it's just not a spot that you need to particularly worry about as much like under Jimmy G. And if they're wanting the money to free up to go and attack other areas of the roster, maybe that's why. But yeah, like you, I think that Matthew Stafford staying in LA makes the most sense. And just from a personal life perspective, do you really want to go to Pittsburgh after you've been living in LA, or what, where else? It's just, if you're gonna retire, just one more year in LA just feels like the much bigger preference.
Well, there's whispers that Wocafornia is too much for some of the Stafford family. That all said, um, yeah, I could see the cash flow thing being important just for them going, hey, you just saw what happened when we had no depth and we had O-line wreckage across the board. O-line are getting more and more expensive every year because there's just so many less hits in the draft. And then the D line is obviously not cheap. So I can see just saying like, hey, you know, give us 10 million of play money and we can solidify the D line. And now we also have to replace Cooper Cup. But we are back on the board. Our boy Royals goes ahead of us. So we do have some rookie receivers in Restrepo and Alik and Yo Manor. Anyone
I don't
standing
have
out
a
to
I
you?
don't have a strong take on either of those receivers. So if you want to take them, I'm fine with that. I think we've got strong enough options everywhere else when the board comes back around to us.
Yeah. Restrepo's falling, so he makes sense just to, you know, dart at. We've also mentioned Drake. All three of these quarterbacks are likely to see rookie receivers
Yeah.
added to the roster, so that makes sense. Curious what your leans are at this next pick. I think we can speak freely.
Yeah, so I don't hate Zach Ertz. I think what he showed last year really surprised me. I didn't expect him to have anywhere near as much juice as he did. Dalton Schultz is kind of okay value, and Noah Gray is worth a speculative pick. So, like, I'm kind of okay with the tight ends. I'd also be okay if we wanted to place a bet on another running back like Jordan Mason or Austin Eckler. But outside of that, it's Jatavian Sanders is the guy who I think there's some real upside to, but I probably want him as my tight end 3 rather than tight end 2.
Let's do Ertz. It seems like yeah, I agree with you. He showed a lot more quality juice and health than I would have given the old man credit for. And it seems like he'll be a bargain. And Cliff loves him. And it just makes the most sense to return for both sides because you want to add weapons to Jaden Daniels' roster. You don't want to take away. And it's a guy that he had really good chemistry with. And it did not seem like they wanted Ben Sinnott to be a real tight end and how they used him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as a tight end, too, I'm okay with that. There's obviously like retirement risk if it doesn't resign, but at 180, I think a lot of these tight ends are risks to be kind of zeros and duds as well. You might as well
I'm
take a guy who was a top 10 tight end just for like single week upside.
I think once you've committed to Brock Bowers in round 2, you're basically saying that Brock Bowers should be a tight end on the vast majority of weeks. And the weeks where he doesn't sneak in are going to be those weeks where he gets 4 for 45 yards and ends up sort of like giving you a middling return, not hitting double digits. And in that situation, you're just hoping that that's the week where Zach Ertz gets into the end zone. And we saw last year that Zach Ertz was being counted on for the red zone. We saw that, in short yardage plays, we liked going to him. He's not going to rack up massive amounts of yardage. He only had 2 games in the regular season with more than 4 touches. He only had 4 games over 47 yards all season. We know what he is, but if we can get those touchdowns, he had 6, 7 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion as well. That's good enough to kind of just give us something opposite Brock Bowers, and sometimes that's easier to take rather than getting a little too speculative on some other guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially when they had 3 other tight ends behind him, and the thing with Senate was he couldn't even unseat Bates as like the tight end 2.
Yeah.
And that's tough from we don't want to, and you're going to hear a lot about this from the guys who are coming out with guides and ranks, like here on the channel with Rich. I know JJ Zacharyson will have his year 2 model stuff. When you have a rookie season where you're basically a nada, the odds you pan out to be anything are pretty tough. So yeah, and again, if he returns to Washington, not only is he a starting tight end who's running a majority of the routes with really good touchdown upside, his touchdown upside is really good because he's attached to a really phenomenal offense and quarterback. That's the big 3.9 selling point for me. If he was going 2 rounds higher and I'm having to take him over like Otten or Komet or some of these potential breakout rookies. That's a tougher sell, but yeah, it's him versus some of these other guys. I'm willing to accept that little bit of a risk, considering that tight ends at this point in the draft are all pretty much a risk. One tight end nugget I did see that I wanted to share with the good people: Ben Albright, insider connected to the Broncos. His expected tight end free agent ad was Juwan Johnson. So that was
Ooh.
interesting that, like, if you're doing these phantom stacks, Juwan is free in these drafts, and Taysom Hill tore his ACL and is old. Do we want to add Jatavian Sanders here to finish up our tight end room and pair with Bryce Young?
If you think we need a third tight end, then fine. Otherwise, like it's probably a running back, isn't it?
I think we can wait. We got Kendra, Justin, Marshawn Lloyd, and these guys.
Yeah, I think I'd probably be. Go on, you choose it because I know like we disagreed on Justice Hill last year, but I'm fine if you want to take him for some team correlation.
Anytime you can take a running back who did nothing in his year one, like we just said, you got to do it. I do think the excuses you can make for him are good enough, and those are that he was injured, fluky ankle, internal organ stuff. That's tough. And Emmanuel Wilson is a free agent, so he's currently the only other running back on the roster, I believe, behind Jacobs.
Yeah.
And the coaches were really glowingly about him in camp until he got injured. So if there's a guy that could be the exception to the rule, his cost seems good enough, and then we can make our decision about I think this is a nice double tap spot. We kind of have our pick of the litter.
Yeah, so I'd be okay taking Kendrick Smith. A lot of the running backs in this range, I'm still getting to grips with. So if you've got a strong lean on Rashad Smith or Woody Marks, I don't mind going with them, but they're not guys I can speak on at the moment.
Well,
Outside of them,
let's get a guy. So Baishal Tootin has been pretty buzzy lately. Couple good notes for him are that he's expected to come blaze the 40 and be extremely fast. So he could be a really high riser. So I don't mind. It's after round 14. I don't mind reaching for him, considering we need more running backs in this range. His speed could vault him up. At least in draft ADP. And Lance Zierlein, he just published his first round of combine draft prospect grades a couple weeks ago, actually. And Tootin stood out as his fifth film graded running back. And his mock draft database ADP seems in a similar fashion to some of the guys going above him. And I certainly feel better about him than like a Woody Marks. And then Audric Estime, I didn't feel like adding two rookie running backs who could get completely doghoused and forgotten about going into year two, with Javonte almost certainly not coming back to Denver per the insider. So figure that's a fun guy to add, and could rookie running back box.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It's just worth taking those dart throws, I think, on the running backs. You see how much the guys kind of just come from nowhere some points. You go back to the year with Isaiah Pacheco. Nobody was drafting him at this point in the season. So even just taking those kind of dart throws, I'm very comfortable with it. Tyler, we've got 2 picks left. What do you think we need to round out this one?
I think running back receiver, just to give us a 3-7-8-2 build, feels good to me. Unless we get like a guy like Gesicki, or we also mentioned Jawan. I don't need to
Yeah.
have a third tight end with Bowers. We talked about two would give us the flexibility. So probably one more running back, one more receiver.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Like, unless there's something that screams great value or fits nicely into a stack, I just don't see the necessity with round 2 Bowers. Generally, I am a 3 tight end person when it comes to these. I know one real time saying in the chat, if you don't draft 3 tight ends, you're doing it wrong. But I think there's exceptions to it. And when you're talking about a round 2 tight end and a very high round 2 tight end, I'm okay taking that risk on it. And look, if we get bitten by bye weeks, we get bitten by bye weeks. If we get bitten by Zach Ertz retiring, so be it. It's just one of those kind of things. But I'm very comfortable with that one, I
Yeah.
think.
Good news. I have bigger concerns that Brock Bowers. I don't need another tight end if Brock Bowers is doing round 2 or round 1 ADP things. Quite frankly, this early on. Also, Of all the bye week hits that hurt your advance rates from all the data that's come out, tight end is the least impactful, truly, quarterback being the most impactful. So, and tight end is also the position that scores the least. So just going on record that that's more important. I also had a feeling Tootin is the guy that's getting steamed up. So getting him now might allow us to take another guy going earlier. Those two that's standing out are Gibson and Estime.
So what else is there at the running back room? The running back position, what have we got there?
Estime, Kareem Hunt, Antonio Gibson, McLaughlin, Khalil Mullings, Cam Akers, Sean Tucker. It's pretty bleak.
Ty Johnson, Devin Singletary going undrafted, Kenny Gainwell.
You want some Singletary?
I kind of do want some Devin Singletary. I know it's pretty uninspiring, but like, look, he's going to be on the Giants next year. The team like him. We've talked about why we don't want to draft Tyrone Tracy at his ADP a crazy amount. Like, I think there's a very real argument you can make for Devin Singletary just for touchdown equity and giving you a little bit of volume to support around guys like Marshawn Lloyd and guys who there are question marks about.
No, absolutely. And it was he took the goal line and workload away from Tyrone Tracy at times. We have Drake May. Do you want to add Kayshon Boutte, or do you want to take another shot either at like Slayton or a rookie?
Mylene, yeah. Well, what about Jalen Polk and just counting on him maybe doing something under better leadership?
You tell me what makes you happy, because that does not make me happy, but I'll click what you want.
Let's go Jalen Polk, man. Like, and look, very much with you on rookies who don't perform in the first year. They face an upward path to relevancy going forward. There's loads of statistics to back that up. But I'm not sure we can call the coaching staff in New England last year competent. What Kayshon Boutte did was really impressive. I thought he was completely done and likely to be out of the league. But Jalen Polk was somebody that we were all absolutely hammering several rounds higher than this last year, and I'm just not ready to see him go undrafted in 20-round best ball.
You know what? No, that's totally fair, and I'm glad you said that, because that brings up two things to me. It was a very inept coaching staff. We saw a guy say, "I want," the head coaching staff. The head coach himself said, "I want to bench Ramondre Stevenson," and then forgot to bench him and needed to be reminded after the first drive of the game. Secondly, very inside baseball. Underdog partner Steve Smith, who has been in the news recently, but we're not going to talk about that, did say that when he found out who the receivers coach was in New England, laughed and said, "I forgive everything. I understand now why they're doing what they're doing, and it makes no sense, because that guy and the way he coaches and the way he played," and just laughed about it. So it's like, and this is a new coaching regime, and so like the things, if this was still, Antonio Pierce, or not Antonio Pierce, if it was Gerard Mayo, I'd be concerned about the doghouse, but this is a new coaching staff. So everybody's asses, are going to be evaluated. Polk does get a new shot, potentially. He did have good draft capital, so the front office at least thought enough of him to invest, and there's a potential that, just being coached to play the way you don't naturally play, if we're to believe, a former player's inside baseball knowledge. I swear to God, I'll stop saying that phrase, chat. And if I say it, shame me. There is hope from that perspective of, again, if we're going to do, this is the make Tom happy, make exceptions draft. Those things to note are pretty good for that, that outcome. And yeah, at least in round 20, he does stack, he does correlate, and he is going to be on the team. He seemed more alive for the team than maybe like, Javon Baker, who couldn't even get on the field because of practice issues. So at least Polk, it was like we don't feel comfortable with him playing based on these other guys, but we knew this was a team that was like very veteran deference anyway.
Yeah. Like, let's say it's not something where I've got a massive strong stance on it, but like, I think, a guy that we were high on and didn't really have the greatest opportunities last year, I'm willing to roll the dice in round 20 on him. But yeah, that's pretty fun team, Tyler. Give the audio listeners what they need.
We finished up with a 3-7-8-2 build. Drake May, Bryce Young, Sam Darnold at quarterback, Mario Hampton, Jalen Warren, Tony Pollard, Jerome Ford, Marshawn Lloyd, Bayshell Tootin, and Devin Singletary in the running back room. Malik Neighbors, DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, Luther Burden III, Rashad Bateman, Quentin Johnson, Xavier Restrepo, And he's not dead yet, Jalen Polk at wide receiver, in our tight end room is Brock Bowers and Zach Ertz. We're just playing the hints at tight end and hoping it all works out. And I feel pretty comfortable with that. And as far as the team build, I like the shots we took at rookies. I like the shots we took at veterans. And yeah, when you see guys like Kareem Hunt, Alexander Madison, and Amir Abdullah matter in best ball last year, I don't mind the Devin Singletary shout at all, because coaches liking you and you having size and pass down trust, there are worse things to have as far as darts to matter in best ball at running back.
Yeah, I think it's point by Benny as a counter. He's not the regimes guy. Maybe we move him to another situation. It could be good for him. Dallas. I think he's too new into his rookie contract for us to probably see that. I think it's a fair rebuttal, but I think they'd probably roll dice for another year. Tyler, anything you want to hit on in the chat here?
Apparently this was a topic the chat would like to hear the take on the Steve Smith news. What we will say is that it's never good to on your day off be pulled into a mess whenever you've got a good thing going at home. And so what I will say is morally and ethically, definitely don't support playing the flute in the marching band at the same time, banging the drums in the marching band. Tough look. All that said, you do got to respect game. And whenever you're making your competition ice up after a hard session, you do got to respect the grind. Allegedly.
Absolutely. In terms of the draft book, can you just pull that up for a minute? I just wanted to circle back to Artillery Frost asking, is he crazy to think the RB glory hole is the last 4 rounds this year? Yeah, I was kind of starting to look back at the data from last year. It definitely wasn't a classic year for the kind of glory hole range of like picks 72 to 110 for running backs last year. There were some hits in it, which I'll recap at some point. I think it's probably a bit before those last 4 rounds. Like these last 4 rounds feel very last 4 rounds still. Guys like Will Shipley, who barely had a touch last year, Trevor Etienne, who feels like he's got a massive range of outcomes in the drafts. Obviously, we took Devin Singletary. But if you could scroll us up a few rounds, Tyler, to that kind of area of the draft that pinned me colors to last year, guys there, the J.K. Dobbins, Pacheco, Etienne, Brian Robinson, Zach Charbonnet, Najee Harris, Scatterboo, Tank Bigsby, Swift, Devin Neal, Trey Benson, like that kind of feels like the area to me. Even guys like Rashad White, like these are the guys where if things fall their way, I think there's still supreme value in them. But I don't know if there's anybody right there right now who I'd be willing to stake sort of 25-30% onto. Anyone for you, Tyler?
The Rashad White point is a good one. There were some tweets and virality the last couple days and couple weeks. His name's been popping up. One thing I wanted to note is that, like, at this point in the off season, you want to what a player did in college is less important once they have several years in the league. So a guy like Sean Tucker's workload and all that good stuff, that already took a hit when he went undrafted. And then he's operated as the running back 3. We saw him have a huge spike. So you want to add him to your running back room, attached to a good offense? Absolutely. But when, in Rashad White's case, Jerome Ford's case, when the coaching staff likes you and they trust you, specifically on pass downs, and you're mentioned by the new OC, you have value. And right now, he does stand out. He and Jerome Ford both stand out as really strong values given price, given offenses, especially through the upside. We've seen Cleveland have really high ceiling games with competent quarterback play. And it's almost surely going to be Cam Ward, the quarterback 1, or a very talented, hopefully, veteran quarterback. So running backs attached to that with low costs seem like that's a bet I am willing to make. That said, we're going to see a lot of things shift as we get more information. I will say that I get what he's saying is like the last 4 rounds being a nice spot for running backs because it's so flat. You've got Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, Jordan Mason, all these guys with question marks, plus these rookies, plus guys that just aren't getting drafted, like you mentioned, Singletary, McLaughlin, etc. Not flashy, exciting guys. Even Kenny Gainwell going mostly undrafted again this year, despite being the coaching staff's preferred favorite RB2 and getting some pass work. Are they exciting, and are they going to potentially, pop off 20? Probably not. But they can have a role. They can give you, 15 points in a pinch, which at this stage in the game can fill your second RB slot or the flex in a bind. So it's like I don't want to ignore those types of guys. And I do think that's a really nice spot to fill out a running back room that I've either pushed it very far and just load up on a bunch of those guys hoping to hit, because we saw guys like that pan out last year again, just because running back chaos works both ways. The guy right behind can benefit, but the guy two down can benefit because injuries happen in bunches. San Francisco just showed us that, where like every running back in that room got work because they just down bodies. So it's at the end of the day, I do think it's a nice spot to take them, but this running back glory hole is tough because it also happens to be the tight end and quarterback glory hole. Like that, it's a really tight range where everybody
Yeah.
but receiver feels good.
Yeah, exactly. But that's kind of where it was last year. There was a lot of question marks. It's that kind of point where the year before we were approaching like the Rashad Bateman line, where wide receiver really starts to dry up. So you need to make sure you've got your wide receivers by this range. And that's what makes it such a question mark of a range, because somebody is going to emerge from there and somebody can be a league winner, but try to work out who. And looking at the trends of where that's been is where, it's not a proven science at all, but that's where I want to be taking plenty of shots of running backs, and we'll see how things shake out over the offseason. But that's going to do it for this show. Myself and Tyler will be back next Monday, of course. We'll also be doing more slow draft picks on standalone videos throughout the week. Rich is cranking out Dynasty content left, right, and center. Truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you in the chat. It's been an absolute blast tonight, and we will catch you all very soon.